Welcome to Exploring Digital with Purr, a podcast for entrepreneurs and CEOs who want their businesses to benefit from a digital-first approach.
Hi, and welcome back to the first episode in a new series of Exploring Digital with Purr. I'm joined today by Joseph Daniels, who's CEO and founder of Project Etopia Group. Hi, Joseph.
Hey, how are you, man?
Really well. You?
Yeah. Keeping it real in COVID, man. Keeping it real in COVID.
And even though we're just edged into September, you're looking pretty summery.
Yeah. You know, working outside a lot more to get out of the house, I think, is the main context of it, where you don't have an office to go anymore. Feeling that kind of environment is, yeah.
Yeah, the Zoom background belies your garden setting, which is very impressive. So
Wait,
we've got a slightly new...
Sorry, one sec. The Zoom background is not the picture on my thing.
It is your background.
Is it the houses, yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I messed up. My bad.
Don't worry.
I was like, there was someone walking around behind me like 5 minutes ago doing loads of stuff, and I was like, did we just get all that in the podcast? So we may want to like recollect, because I had no idea. Sorry, yeah, I'll talk about that because that's actually my development site in Corby. So sorry, mate.
Well, don't worry, we'll jump onto that later. We've got a slightly new structure and format to these podcasts now, and we're going to start by just. But we've got a slightly new structure and format to these podcasts now, but we kick off in the same way, which is a little introduction. Do you want to explain to the listeners and viewers who are you and what's your experience and how you came to start Project Etopia?
Yeah, so my name is Joseph Daniels, and I'm CEO and founder of Project Etopia Group. Etopia Group was an ideal and an idealism that I came up with while suffering homelessness. So I was homeless at first at 15. I come from a very, very, very broken and unfortunately abusive household. And my mother, when I was 15, was, sectioned. And this led to me being a part of a system in which we call ourselves First World. We're able to give people benefits, but we're not able to look at the general necessity needs of life. And that is, homes, home availability, fuel poverty. So whilst we give out a benefit system, it seemed to me that growing up and going through these cycles, that there was a general need for people to have roofs over their heads, not run out of electric like I used to eating cold pasta, and deliver something that globally can make a difference. And this led to me building what Etopia kind of is today, and the ideal, and that is an economic and environmental principle utopia, but it's combining economics through scalability and affordability, and it's combining environment through sustainability and social versatility, so young, old, whatever can love it, yeah, and then bridging that into what the company is, and that is an ecchi-tech company. We're not prop tech, fintech, we're ecchi-tech, we're energy, construction, intelligent technologies. And I innovated really key pieces of IP and partnered with global giants such as Samsung to combine energy efficient technologies with IoT devices that, when you put them inside our specialist building material, can create circular economy, net zero building.
That's an incredible story. So really interesting company at the crux of a number of different fields of innovation. And so specifically, you have to make your own ecchi-tech descriptor. That's fantastic. That's a cutting edge. Brilliant, and really want to dive into that into that in a little bit more depth. But we're also going to ask you to really challenge yourself, and I'm going to throw you some icebreaker little topic headlines, and if you can give me a one-word response as quickly as you can, this will be a really insightful Rorschach test of what Joseph Daniels is thinking. So, can you give me a one-word response to Project Etopia?
Environment.
Joseph.
Founder, passion.
The Etopia team.
Collective.
Etopia's work.
World changing.
Space travel.
Unnecessary.
Last book you've read.
Boy. The last thing I read was a thesis on thermodynamics. I don't read books. I read more. I go on Scholar. So you got me there. You got me.
Well, let's call it academic then.
Yeah,
Academic could be the one word.
academic, unpublished thesis.
Yeah, limited audience. Okay. Best Netflix lockdown TV series.
Oh, Zac Efron's Down to Earth.
Brilliant. Favorite pudding.
I'm gluten-free and vegan, so a gluten-free vegan cheesecake.
Oh, niche. And this is pretty expansive because the property world varies, and you're working in all sorts of interesting stuff internationally. But if you can give me one word for property sector as well.
Leftover. So time left over.
Good, really insightful. Okay, fantastic. So you've spoken about all the innovation that you went through, the R&D activities, the companies you partnered with, and the fact that you're at this crux of really interesting sectors in property, in environmental friendliness, in technology. How do you distill that down, and what would you say innovation means at Project Etopia? Is there one kind of overriding direction you take it? Is there a philosophy you follow, or is it just let's try everything?
No, so everything has to be circular economy. So when I mentioned Etopia earlier about the economic, environmental, so we've combined that affordability, scalability with sustainability and versatility. When I was looking at developing, and when we look at to develop, you're looking at more the wider spectrum than the product you're developing. So the key things are, can it be economic in its point to, can I scale it so everyone, a billion people, can get access? Is it going to be affordable in different markets? So are the territories going to be different? How are we going to make sure it can address a global marketplace? And then how do we build it sustainably or create it sustainably? How do you make that thing? So using recycled materials or circular economy, and obviously not using more energy than it demanded to create it. And then the final thing is, how can we make everyone love it? No matter, again, you could be a person that, doesn't want to get up and turn the lights off because of the arthritis in the knees, but the same person that just wants his house or her house to be quite unique and dynamic. And so we go on that pattern curve of development, and that is effectively what the research and development team at Etopia do. We do things Etopian. And by the end of that, you get a self-sustaining circular economic product that provides lifestyle benefits, that makes people more conscious of the world, but in an interactive way where they can feel considered and kind, not in a way where they feel it's being forced upon them.
Perfect. So the circular economy is that underlying philosophy, and that links it all together. Do you feel that, because so you're working in all these different fields, but it feels very human centric, right? It's about people and where they live and how they live their lives. Mm-hmm. But you've got these complementary, let's call them, worlds of innovation in things like smart cities, smart offices, and perhaps things that are getting more press than smart homes necessarily. Smart homes are coming online, and people are talking about it a little bit more. But it feels like you've got a different approach in it, and it's making it far more human centric. But at the same time, you're doing it in really challenging environments. You're not going for let's make this building in South London more energy efficient. You're saying let's do it in the desert. Yeah. So what's made you go, let's innovate and let's really let's take it a global stance on it?
So let's break it down, and I'm going to be quite strong in the way I say this, because there is a humanitarian part of this society that's coming together for the first time, and I'm happy to be in an example and be around it, whether it is the incredible Greta or the like. But ultimately, what benefit does it have doing it in southeast London, where the gentrification and buildings are outweigh the economic capacity for that human being to live? Rents in these centralized areas, not that I won't build them, not that we don't want to, because we're involved in many active projects. What does it mean to someone in an shanty town to build their own hurricane-proof, flood-proof, energy-positive building in less than 2 weeks and learn to use tools in a way which can provide their next generations with something they can believe in, rather than being dehumanized for their labor? So for me, it's very important that the things we do and the places we do it are for the people that will benefit from it the most. Now, that is people just like me and you, because we've all been affected by this crisis. We've all been affected by this aged system. And whilst you can make profit, you can make things better, you have to do it for people that are going to grow and learn with it. And I think that's really important. And to finish this point is, we went to the Scottish History Museum, I think it was, or Natural Museum Scotland, recently, before COVID, just pre-COVID. And David Attenborough said maybe this is going to be the first year where we're able to combine the environmental benefits with profitability. And I think that's what's important to evidence. If you can go and build economies with future-proof technologies that give these people lifestyle, when the children grow up in it, they'll grow into a new age of comfort and kindness, as well as work ethic and delivery. And that's really important.
So would you say it's taking a very kind of long-term view on the profitability, and it's about increasing profitability for societies rather than necessarily you as a company?
Yeah. The irony of it is we're an ecotech company. So I mentioned it again, this energy, construction, and technology are the three most profitable, highest yielding sectors. There's $228 trillion in the worldwide real estate economy. If we get 0.001%, I'm richer than any man that's come out of Britain. Think about that economic scale, right? So why do we have to focus on only profiteering when we can focus on humans? Because the day that I pass away, and hopefully the day that Etopia is it's becoming bigger than myself, but it's bigger than myself. What it spreads is a message that you can build things from the ground up, but so that foundations don't fall apart when someone lives in that top rise apartment. That you can live as a community-based system, you can train and influence, you can help and develop. And that is more important than, I think, anything else we have in this world. Because ultimately, the consumption of human beings is causing, the planet to be in a difficult state. We're all learning things. And now through learning things, we're all becoming kinder. COVID has made everyone closer. But what if we were just a little bit closer in our development processes as well? What if we were just a little bit kinder? And I think that comes with how you live, and that comes with what your motives are. So if the motivation from us building buildings can be giving energy back to the community instead of capitalizing on it and selling it because you're already paying no bills, then that's what it should be. And that's what we want to do.
So would you challenge that? I guess the traditional definition of a company is, or the purpose of a company is to create value for its shareholders. Or do you think is your perspective of a shareholder a much wider understanding? I guess.
I think if you take my company, for example, the yields and returns that the investors will see from only taking 1% of the UK market will probably be more than any of their other small investments. So the shareholders are the people that enable you. If it was not from my kind shareholders who have showed me how to be and how to learn, I would not be in this fortunate position. If you look at the two core investors, the Finks and the Rubens, the Reuben Foundation does incredible work all around the world. If you look at the Fink, Lord Stanley Fink, he's worked in a number of charity organizations. He works on a charitable schools company called ARC, and he innovates in a lot of young startups. What it's enabled me to do is, by making those shareholders the profit and showing them that we can make the money, it also shows, they also get to show that you can invest in people and things that also make a difference at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. You can do both. You just have to do it from the ground up. You can't take old policy. You can't take old ways of doing it. You're not going to drive a Tesla on a road that's not designed with a new base infrastructure. You're not going to, innovate unless this infrastructure is there. And, old policies are being broken every day now because of technology. It's basically saying, well, we can't evaluate it that way. Why? Because we've got too much evidence that stacks against it. Hence why Tesla have released their own insurance. And it's the same. So what we have to do is we have to reinvent these policies that set the stance, that set the example, that set the shareholders their goals of development and I suppose profitability, of course, but by doing it in a way that really has impact, not just for this local world that we used to live in, this local world, now for this global world that we all live in.
It's a really interesting perspective, because I think so many people think of innovation as, well, let's pick the biggest area of profitability that we can, improve upon, or what's the thing that will make the biggest impact, and that's where we'll focus our innovation. And I guess if you're saying, well, it's not about going for the biggest fish, and it's not even about the biggest environmental impact. I guess if you were saying, well, look, the biggest polluters are China and America, why aren't we exclusively focusing on those? That's not what you're saying. You're saying, let's make it about the impact, about the benefit to individual humans and their societies, and that's the direction we want to focus our innovation. but it's not like you're not concerned about pulling some good stats and getting some awards and good figures out of your innovation either. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your energy performance certificate score and any other goals you've got that you're trying to hit in terms of successes with your project?
Yeah, so I'm proud to say that, not only when I first built my school extension was it featured by the Royal Institute of British Architects, our first true development that we've delivered on that's got high street lending has broken the energy performance certification mold. So any EPC certificate that you see on any of your fridges or any of your other electronics devices, they have obviously those for homes. And the UK average is a D, so 60. We broke the mold with the highest currently being 105, but our average being 103. We have run one of our key systems through the World Bank Edge Green Building System, which is a global green building system. And they see benefits in buildings that reduce CO2 by 20%. We're already getting results of 96%. And the house we built in Namibia is churning out more energy than it could use tenfold because of the daylight sunlight hours there and the way we built the system. So it's really, we are setting that benchmark. We'll be launching in the US by the end of this year. We'll be launching in the Middle East we've already got some building products in the Middle East ready to be launched there. And I want to be the first company to build a net zero building on each of the 7 continents, but start with 6 because Antarctica is difficult before 2025.
That's some big goals. So, if you are breaking the mold, how long is it going to be before the energy performance certificate has to change and they have to address the balance and restructure how they're scoring things?
I think I'm already working on some programs that there's a lot of good people in sustainability that are increasing the methodologies. There's some incredible work being done by Shamir, the head of BREEAM, looking at embodied sustainability. BREEAM in real estate is huge. It's the way that Lloyd's quantified their green investment bond. And Shamir is an incredible man who's been working towards bringing that into the next generation. How do we apply this BREEAM tool, this building research establishment tool, to domestic built environments, to other built environments, and also working with Edge and the World Bank, and we're talking with them and the IFC and saying how do we. The world is becoming again this one world place. So okay, it may be arid in the desert and it may be cold in Scotland, but if I can prove a building does both, which we've done, then why aren't we evaluating a whole world program? There's lots of good work happening in that space. And it seems that we're just we're at the forefront of redefining the change first. And then, hopefully others catch up because there's 2 billion people living in poverty. So.
Well, I guess as you said, the property sector being full of leftovers, it's just a scale that doesn't work anymore. And it's not about repurposing it. It's about having a new one that works in your global setting, as you said.
Mm.
So, you mentioned earlier that you're not reading books, you're reading unpublished theses with really technical information. So, how do you, as a company and personally, stay on top of new tech? Do you speak with advisors? Is it through networking? Is it through do people come to you with their new tech? How do you find out the latest and greatest ways to improve efficiency and to build that into building products?
Yeah, so with directly. I mean, I've got a list about as long as my arms of future innovations that we're going to be plugging in. So I think from a amount to do already and kind of product thing, we're probably way ahead of the curve. But what then happens is everyone can have an idea. It's realizing an idea. So what I've got some incredible people around technical development. And we work very, very closely with Samsung. And we just signed a global partnership with Samsung, bringing the biggest tech company in the world to the industry. And we work collaboratively to understand the technical difficulties to getting them to market. So there's ideas for days. There's a vision for years. But that vision now has to manifest into reality with all these products and technologies. And we have a team of internal experts, as well as you say, working with tech experts, some of the biggest in the world, to get their inputs and hopefully continue to be at the forefront. We're probably 4 or 5 steps ahead of every competitor we have at the moment. I know that we're the only building provider that has developed its own IoT device, its own energy technologies, and its own construction material all at the same time. And then we'll be looking at how we utilize each building as an asset itself. So as you said earlier, when you build the city, well, the homes, people may not be talking about smart homes, but if I build 10 smart homes, it becomes a smart street. And if I build 10 smart streets, it becomes a smart town. And so now we're looking at the wider application on what happens when you combine all these amazing things. What if you get 150 Tesla battery banks and put them all together? Can you make an aircraft?
Yeah.
And that's the steps that we're taking on and bringing in, again, global experts. People like the chair of the UK Business Council Sustainable Development, the head of BREEAM, take all that advice and take that knowledge in and hopefully manifest it into something that can change the world incrementally.
I'm interested, is your philosophy purely about new homes, or do you feel that there's innovations that you're working on that people could use to retroactively improve existing buildings? Because obviously one of the most inefficient things is to destroy something and start again.
I'm not allowed to talk about that because my brand and PR director would lose it. But there's something coming in November about old housing stock that's going to change. I changed the new build game and I've proven that. And now there's something coming very, very, very soon that's about to change the whole way we look at existing housing stock as well, from an energy and smart perspective.
Okay, I look forward to catching up with you after that. But that's very exciting. So you mentioned as well that
I've got a lot of these things happen. There's innovations coming. There's a few of them coming, but then I'm like doing them, and then when I do podcasts and other things, have to make sure that I don't give away the info too early.
Well, I guess that's the flip side of innovation is how at what point you share information, right? So if you're 4 or 5 steps ahead of your competitors, suddenly you're a target for industrial espionage, and you've got to be very, very careful about how you control the release of information. As you say, your PR and brand director might have a fit. As part of your innovation, do you have to be quite careful about how you publish and, in fact, actually implement this stuff? Because I guess for the moment it's implemented, it's public knowledge.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. It's the weird thing, isn't it, that Coca-Cola doesn't have any IP, but it's hard to get the recipe. We've got some great people in there. I've got Stephen Avila, people like Rosanna Lawn, even Alex Finkelstein. They work with us to make sure it's protected in a way, to make sure that, because I'm willy-nilly to talk about it, there's some like digital planning tools that I've innovated. Like, you'll be surprised, like the things I've innovated, and there's a pack of this little box of treats, and I'm like, can I use them yet? And they're like, no. Rosanna's very, okay, we need to make sure that we're maximizing this in a way that can help people to benefit the supply chain, to benefit, and then we've got people like Alex looking at, okay, well, commercially, Joe, how does it sit in the group? And, what does it do? How do we realize it as well? Because the last thing they want me doing is dropping a product in that actually could have had a bigger benefit, right? And so there's a very careful, selective process of the innovations that are developed for their technical readiness. But then higher than technical readiness is that, strategic, commercial, public, media, brand elements of it that all have to be thought about in a very due considered way to make sure that, you don't kill the product and you maximize the product and also benefit people at the same time.
You mentioned that quite a bit of the innovation, evidently has come from you. You're a good ideas man. They flow from you. How do you encourage your team to innovate more and to think like an entrepreneur, I guess, and an innovation person? I mean, do you foster it in a way of making time available to them for innovation? Is it a bit like Google, where they've got a day a week that they can work on their own thing? That's how do you encourage it?
Yeah. So in principle, we have a current needs and demands. The group is broken down into different segments. So we have our own IoT company. We have our UK delivery company. We're getting set up our UK building mechanism company. And what that means is that we've got teams that are focused on operational delivery. What is that? Scaling, building net zero houses, right? Taking what's there and really innovating it. And then we have a core principal team that have a bi-weekly review. We talk about the new developments. Also, another thing, new partnerships. There's some partnerships that we've been discussing that are quite large, that even in their own right, while they're not innovative developments of technology, have to be reviewed because, like Samsung, you don't just go and here you go. So we do have this kind of bi-weekly catch-up group that sits together and evaluates what goes in and what goes out, right? Or what comes in and what is shown out, I suppose, is a better term for that.
Yeah, no, and that's worked well for you. You know, just having that regularity to innovation, making it part of the schedule. That's led to good results for you. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you know, anyone can turn around and be a good real estate developer. Like, I'm not being funny. In today's market, where the need is so large and the materials are there, it's very easy to be a real estate developer, and it gets confusing sometimes on the message from people. But if you're not an innovator and you're not looking at what the product will be in 2 to 3 years' time, or how that product can change over time, i.e., again, Tesla's not a reference because the only people doing it, but putting Netflix in the car later. If you're not thinking about that, you will never last in today's way of doing business. You know, trading economics do not work the way they used to. It's all about brand. It's all about sustainability. It's all about innovation. If you don't have those three things, you'll just be another company in today's world, and you can't act like you're not ahead of innovation. So it's very important to have those you know, regular discussion topics.
perfect. Okay, and I guess the other big change that's happened, we touched on it earlier, was post-COVID impact of the structure of city changing, the nature of what people are looking for in a home changing as well. You know, the fact that you're working from the garden today, you're trying to find different places in your home to work. And this is probably not just a London trend. I mean, yes, we're slower than most going back to the office, but there's a global impact too. So what do you think the biggest changes to people's homes will be, and the way people live their lives, and how you can, you know, innovate to address that?
Functionality. I think COVID's biggest impact is going to be functionality. People aren't just going to be, you know, you people will be buying houses outside of where they live to understand that third bedroom matters. People will be knocking through and building walls. People will be also looking at their bills, right? So when you go to work, you don't pay the bill, right? So you kind of go to work and you go stay in the space for 8 hours a day. Out of that 8 hours, you work pretty solidly. So people will be looking at, okay, hold on a minute, you know, why are the bills so expensive? Why? Because you're charging multiple. People will start saying, okay, what's the economic impact of me now? I do a lot of this at home, and people have changed. This working remotely will be a thing. You could be anywhere in the world. You know, large companies do it already. My board meetings sometimes has, you know, California, you know, people in California, because these individuals that invest are so I suppose, large in their scale of business that they're not refined to one country. I think we'll start seeing a lot more of the SME businesses having more of an outreach. So what people will say is, how much am I investing in my hardware at home? How much is my hardware at home, what technology enabling me inside or away from the house? And hold on a minute, I don't want to pay bills, and I want to be able to knock that wall through or put an extension on the roof. And there'll be some, you know, with the Etopia homes, you definitely have that versatility, but I think it's going to be for everyone else to try and find that now, because other companies aren't going to be able to keep up with that. So, you know, the innovations we needed to build 400,000 homes, that was when they all had 16 types of building that all look the same up a cul-de-sac in the outskirts of some big city development. Now they're going to all have to be different. People are going to want different things, and they're not going to throw money at something they're not comfortable enough to spend so much time in it. So I think there's a number of things that are going to be coming.
Oh, but no, absolutely. It takes us in a number of directions. I know, for example, probably even, I think it's this week, the government's new kind of insulation grant scheme goes live.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be really interesting to see, well, if they're encouraging people to spend money, if people aren't going to be going to work and people aren't going to be investing in their own properties, what are the other? Because I mean, insulation is not new technology. That's old technology. Yes, there've been improvements in it, but what are the smarter ways of doing it? You know, the innovations that you're working on that people can bring.
That's the key that you just said there. The key you just said there was the smart. People don't realize why I developed my IoT platform. Before, I don't want to go too far into the IoT platform, because, you know, it gets into the boring talk of Google, Nest, and Hive and all these other companies. They're not intelligent in the way that they communicate, and therefore you're actually going to want a home that can move around you a bit. You know, the ability, you know, hold on. So we're saying you need to go put loads of insulation in there, rather than saying, well, we've got big pieces of metal that you stick against the wall that you turn on, they get really hot and then take ages to cool down, rather than having a smart sensor with a smart thermostat and a smart heating source system that's run by solar panels. You know, I think that question is kind of like, hold on a minute, you know, why are we trying to do the old hat? There's intelligent ways of doing it now. That's going to probably be again, more news coming soon in November, but that's definitely a huge addressable opportunity, and it'll give people more functionality, because you put installations in your loft, and that's it. You should be able to buy things that give you functionality as well and give you purpose, because you wouldn't buy a phone just because it makes phone calls.
No, they're pretty bad at that. Good. Okay. Well, that's so there's a really interesting perspective, and I know it's a weird thing, isn't it? Talking about how little heating systems have changed in generations, right? We're talking about putting a new heating system in at the moment, and it's being upgraded to mains gas, and you think, but that's already so behind.
Yeah.
Ground source heat pumps have been around for long enough, and that's still not the cutting edge. There's so little innovation in that space. But so much that can be done. Brilliant. All right, so we're a little tight for time, so why don't we talk about some outro bits and pieces as well? So, I guess thank you very much for talking to me. I wanted to get a couple of other couple of tips from you if you were going to advise people who are founders of companies or manage companies and want to learn from the successes you've had in innovating. What would you say the biggest tip for any property developers out there should be to change their thinking and how they become more innovative, more conscious of sustainability? What should they change about their operations?
For other properties, change the whole approach. You can't talk about sustainability and then go build out of embodied carbon. A brick is literally a piece of carbon that's embodied and created using ridiculous temperatures. They need to be innovative in their approach to how they build and why they build. They need to look at technologies that can be introduced, and they need to be way more considered when it comes to actual sustainability as a core company as well. It's very easy to get listed on some of these green agenda awards for your policies and what your sustainability policy says. That sustainability policy doesn't take the last 15,000 houses you built over the last 3 years and combine all the CO2. So I think if you're more conscious of your output, genuinely, it will be easier for the innovation. It'll be easier for the market to work more collaboratively, because we'll be in a better position to talk to each other. Because the need is bigger than our own. It's a national need.
Good. Okay, so start again for property developers. I like it. And let's take a slightly wider perspective then. So not property specific, but any business leader, owner that needs to consider better uses of technology. What would you say the thing that's helped you the most, or the biggest sort of game change for you? Has it been IoT devices? What was the thing that's opened up the biggest technological improvement for you as a company?
One of the biggest secrets that I've kept for a very long time is that nothing exists without hardware combinations. You think that the hardware is singular. You think if you've got a good piece of hardware, you'll have the software. The biggest companies in history and the best companies, the two best companies that just both did a stock split last Friday, are two of the only companies in the world that have successfully combined software and hardware, Apple and Tesla. They approached it from a software understanding. The user uses the soft, but the thing it's within is the hardware. And so if you're really looking at developing a business, and you're looking at any business, make sure that when you realize today's everything's at everyone's fingertips, that hardware brings them access. Once you've got that access point, that the software point needs to be addressed for the usability. And if you can combine software and hardware, doesn't matter what field you're in, you'll have more chance of success, because you'll understand the user and the thing that they're using, which is a really, really important thing to know, to recognize, really.
Well, I guess the other benefit now is that it's distributed hardware. It's using hardware that people have already got in their homes, in their hands, and you don't need to invest significant amounts to take advantage of it.
Exactly. Also, that your journey, you may have the idea of what you want as number 5, but don't be afraid to go out and use things that exist for version 1, 2, and 3. Once you get to version 3, then be the master of the product. But it's actually to learn the processes and learn what is out there. It's sometimes best to go and work with people and use their processes to really understand and work collaboratively in those earlier days to help you develop a partnership or a core technology later down the line.
And as someone who's had to protect lots of their innovation, has it ever been a case of you've been reticent to release things because it was giving too much away, or have you always been kind of relaxed about releasing stuff incrementally?
We're very, this whole building an ecitech, building a new sector and having to kind of label it ourselves with ecitech. combining energy, construction, and IoT gives you three completely different markets, three completely different policies, and three completely different products. If you took an expert from construction and put them in an engineering sustainability, F-gas, air conditioning, solar room, and then you took that other person and took them to a software engineer and said, can you three come up with an invention? It's a very difficult bridge. So we've never really been hypersensitive. More so on the IoT side now that, we've got some incredible people working there, protective. But for us, it's all about communication. The market's so huge. So we've been less inclined to hyper protect than I'd say most people usually are in a startup position due to the complexities and difficulties of the industries.
Yeah, but it's the age-old adage of, if you've got to protect it and if you're too reticent to share it, it's probably not good enough. It's not special enough.
Yeah, in a sense. I do see some people, though, that you can throw money at innovations and people can make more of a success than other people. But yeah, usually the innovation is within the person that innovated that thing. And then they surround themselves with incredible people to help them see that vision. And so as long as those people communicate, it should be strong.
So would that be your top tip in general then for entrepreneurs and founders? It's, innovate, but then surround yourself with people who can make that happen.
Yeah. You know what's next, but you're not smarter than everyone. Basically, it's like if you're an innovator and an entrepreneur, you're a leader. You're a natural born leader. You're someone that wants to go on their own journey, and you should go on that journey. But don't forget, you're not going to survive climbing over the Rockies, and you're not going to survive the swamps without people there that know what they're talking about, because you will just run yourself into a tranche.
Joseph, it's been fantastic talking to you, and best of luck with everything that Project Etopia Group's up to, and with your announcements later in the year. Really look forward to hearing more about it, and all the best.
Thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining. Remember to subscribe and follow us, and to share today's insights with other businesses who want to stay relevant in a digital-first world.